guys behind the scenes of a full shoot that I did with a Porsche 911 and a brand called Pelote shoes. This is not sponsored by them, but I do think that there's a lot of information I can give you guys that'll be helpful. We're gonna talk through the logistics, the planning, the gear that I use, some of the ideas that I had along the way, and just bring you guys through the whole process as a car photographer, some of the struggles that we can have when we're out shooting on site. So let's start with the planning and the logistics. For the shoot that we were doing, we were given 3 pairs of shoes to shoot, and I had to shoot those in 3 different locations. Pelote is a driving shoe brand, and they are a higher end brand that works with brands like Porsches, Ferraris. So in there already lies a challenge in that we have to source a higher end vehicle like a Porsche. Fortunately, I have a friend in town who owns a Porsche 911. He's actually one of the guys that I first shot with, so I reached out to him and asked if he'd be willing to let me borrow his vehicle for the shoot. One note that I wanted to make about getting access to vehicles, which can be obviously really challenging as automotive photographers. If you don't have people that you've already developed relationships with that you can get access to their car, either them driving it there for you, with you, and being part of the shoot on that day, or giving you access to it. I have used Turo in the past. Turo does have access to higher end cars if you need them for a photo shoot, for example. The second thing that I needed to source was a photographer. For this shoot in particular, I was actually going to be the model, so the person actually wearing the shoes. So I had to get someone to actually come and photograph me, so I reached out to my friend Aaron. He's a portrait photographer and a really talented videographer as well. The next thing we needed was a date. One thing that you absolutely should look into when you're looking at a shoot date is the local weather. Right now in Canada, it's full-blown winter, so a part of the shoot was that we were going to have 2 winter locations and one that looked less wintry, which we'll get into a little bit later in the video. But this presented obviously the first challenge is finding a day that has good weather, that my photographer is available and the car is available. Fortunately, we were able to find a day during the mid-week. So now that we have the photographer and the car and the day sorted out, logistically we had to sort out some things. So we have 3 pairs of shoes that we needed to photograph. I planned 3 separate locations, 3 separate outfits, and I did all this in my Apple Notes just so that I knew when I got to each location which outfit I wanted to pair with which pair of shoes at which location. Another logistical thing that I had to think about was when we get to each location, how clean or dirty is the car gonna be? As you guys can see here, I was shooting with a white Porsche in the winter, which means that the roads are gonna be absolutely terrible. Now, one thing that I always plan ahead of time is what is the closest car wash to my final location. So then you go to that car wash, you get your car as clean as you possibly can. And then from there, what I do is I pick up some form of waterless car wash. Not sponsored by these guys at all. This is just one that I picked up at Walmart. Does a pretty decent job, and I did ask the owner of the vehicle if he's okay with me using this type of product on his car, because as you may know, car owners can be quite particular about the things that are put on their car. For example, he did provide me with some cleaning cloths that he uses particularly on his vehicle, and actually I really liked them, so I went ahead and ordered some on Amazon. So now that the car's there, the car's clean, we've got our outfit on, we've got our shoes on, we're gonna start shooting. What gear are we using? So I am using the Lumix S5 Mark II. It's a 24 megapixel camera. I recently just picked up the 85mm lens. So what we ended up doing was having the 85mm lens on my camera, and he had a Sony A7 III with a 35mm prime. So we used that camera for the 35mm and my camera for the 85mm, and it actually turned out really well having both cameras. But what's crazy is in the editing process is seeing the differences in the photos. Obviously you have different focal lengths, but the difference between the Sony and the Lumix, I guess I'll chat through a little bit. I really like the image of the Lumix S5 II. If I could put it into words, to some degree it's a softer, easier, colors are very easy to use and seem very natural. Whereas the Sony, great image quality, incredible dynamic range, super sharp photos, but the colors I have to navigate a little bit harder to get them to sit where I want. But for some reason my eye is drawn more to the S5 II and the image, and it's just easier on the eyes. I think it's a really beautiful look. But Aaron also brought the Sony A7S III that we could kind of compare some video with as well, because essentially the Lumix S5 Mark II is the David and the Sony A7S III is, we'll call it the Goliath of the video world right now. But if you guys want another video on that, I would love to compare the two. There's some pretty major differences in the price point. The Sony a7S III goes for $4,700 Canadian, and the Lumix S5 Mark II goes for $2,600 Canadian dollars. So I was able to buy the Lumix S5 Mark II, a 35mm prime and an 85mm prime, and the DJI Ronin Mini for the same price as just the body. Let me know in the comments down below if you want to see a comparisons video, because they're quite different, but both very, very powerful cameras. So when we were shooting on location, I made sure to do a little bit of research on the brand that I was actually shooting for with Pelote. So I went to their Instagram and their website and checked out which kind of photos are they taking of their shoes. So I took screenshots of those images and made sure when I got to each location to capture those photos first. The photos that I know they're gonna use, that I know they're gonna like, and those were our must-have captures. And then from there, Aaron and I were able to get a little bit more creative with what kind of shots we wanted to do, how we wanted to frame them. And for this shot, for example, I kept asking him to kind of scoot back around the car because I wanted to make sure to get the rear tail lights of the 911 and the shoes in the shot. That way we're showing this is the high-end car paired with these beautiful shoes. One thing I would suggest while you're thinking about what kind of shots to get, you can always think about it as like a wide, medium shot and then a tight shot. So make sure that you're getting the environment in the shots, which we're using the 35mm for. These medium shots here where it's me and the car, and then also getting those tight shots of the details as well. On the way to this next location, we got a coffee, of course. I changed into my second outfit, and then when we got there, we made sure to tidy up the car again with the waterless wash. This location ended up being one of our favorites. It's absolutely stunning, and this backdrop worked out so perfectly. It also again worked out with planning that we were able to do it midweek rather than a weekend, as this location does tend to be quite busy. But some of the challenges that we had on this particular set was that there was cars driving by us constantly, and so we had to navigate kind of getting out of their way and not looking stupid on the road while we're modeling shoes, that kind of thing. But fortunately it wasn't too busy. Aaron switched on this set to a 24-70 or one of those, but it was a Tamron lens on his Sony, and this allowed us to get some wider shots as there was a barrier in the way that he was able to get that kind of dead front on shot, as well as get some tighter shots really, really quick with that zoom lens. So after we got these two locations finished in Banff, we ended up driving back to Calgary for our final location, which ended up being the most challenging. A part of what the client wanted was, yes, a winter shoot, but they also wanted something that didn't quite look like winter to give them a bit more diversity. Now this in itself was actually incredibly challenging because it's the dead of winter here in Calgary and we just got a dump of snow. So I had to figure out logistically, how am I going to find a place that looks like summer even though it's not. So I found a location, but I ran into quite a few challenges here that I'm going to talk through. They don't really love car photographers here and they will kick you out quite quickly. So when we showed up, I made sure to park the car and walk down and actually pay for parking, so that if any of the security people saw, they might just see that I'm there parking the car and I went to pay for it. Unfortunately, with this location, it actually ended up being a lot more difficult than I thought to find a summery looking location, and the light was actually coming in quite harsh and very contrasty in this location. So it was a bit of a challenge to actually park the car in a place that we liked and showcase the shoes well enough without the ground being really dirty. We didn't actually get a ton of photos here, but what we ended up doing is just started shooting and putting the shoes in places where the light was hitting it and kind of using some of that contrast to draw attention to the shoes. At the end of it, I think we came out with some photos that we're both pretty happy with, but again, this was the most challenging shoot to do. Harsh light, harsh contrasty light, which is really hard on cameras to balance both the highlights and the shadows. Fortunately, we were able to get a good 20 to 30 minutes of shooting in before the security came and very politely asked us to leave. So we did. We packed up and got out of there. And a little bit of a funny story here is when we were on our way down the parkade, there's this beautiful shot that you can see a lot of Calgarians get at this location. I just cheekily ran out of my car, grabbed my phone, and snapped this photo. And if you look up in the top windows, you can see the lovely security staring down at me being like, ah, that That guy is such a jerk. They were actually super kind, and I'm glad I got this photo because I think it looks great. So here are the big takeaways that I got from this shoot. First, plan your locations in advance and as much of the details around that location as you can possibly think of. This way, when you get to the location, there are not as many surprises and you're able to get to creating content faster. The second tip is plan your shots that you need first, and then when you have those absolutely must-have shots for the client, you can go ahead and get creative with whatever time you have left at that location. I think that gave us peace of mind that we have for sure the shots that they know they're gonna like, and then now we can kind of get some shots that we know we want. The third tip would be for car photography specifically, make sure to bring some mobile car cleaner. This will help you significantly, and be particular about the details as much as you can. For example, with these interior car shots, this Porsche floor mat we wanted in the shot, so we had to like spray that down as well and clean that up. It does help in the capturing process to save you time in post, knowing that you don't have to clean that up afterwards. If you have questions working with brands or car photography and those kind of things, make sure to drop them in the comments down below, because this is what I do and this is what I love to do. If you guys want to be a part of the community, I highly recommend subscribing to the channel here, and you might enjoy this video as well, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Peace.